Disney cruising has become one of my new favorite Disney experiences, but to say it's a little bit scary the very first cruise that you go on is a total understatement. A few of my biggest fears before I ever stepped on board the Disney Cruise Line included, is there going to be enough to see and do? Am I going to be entertained the entire time and enjoy it? And is this a good use of my vacation time and money? Obviously the answer was yes, because I've been back several times since that first ever Disney cruise, but I didn't know that before I stepped on board. So in order to test the waters, get it, waters, we tried a land and sea adventure to start, which means we first went to Walt Disney World, then we went on the Disney Cruise Line, kind of a 2-in-1. Today I'm going to go into more detail about a land and sea adventure, tell you what I really enjoyed, if it's right for you, and how you should order that vacation, whether it's land first or sea first. Let's start with that question first. Is it land first or sea first? And let's take it from the perspective of someone who's never been on board the Disney cruise before. If you've been to Walt Disney World before, or even if you haven't, I recommend that you start the vacation with Walt Disney World, and the second half should be the Disney Cruise Line. I recommend this for many reasons, but one of the biggest ones for me is that feeling that you get when you're back at Walt Disney World. It's a little bit scary to think about something new, the cruise line, so instead you start it with something that's rather familiar. You're at the place where dreams come true, experiencing the ride, seeing the shows, the fireworks at night, and after all of that adventure and you've done all those fun rides, then comes the relaxation time. The reason why this makes sense is because after your 2, 3, or maybe 4-day adventure at Walt Disney World, you can say you have those magical memories, look back at them, say you had so much fun, and now it's time to experience new things on the Disney Cruise Line. So even if you're a little worried about spending your vacation money and time doing these things that you're not familiar with, you still have those memories. So let's say, as an example, which I doubt, but let's say you didn't like the Disney Cruise Line. You still have those memories from Walt Disney World. It's the first thing you did when you were there. A logistical question that I get all the time about a land and sea adventure: how do you get from Walt Disney World to Port Canaveral? My favorite way to get to Port Canaveral from Walt Disney World or the Orlando International Airport is using the Disney Cruise Line Magical Express. Technically, it's not the Magical Express, it's called the Disney Cruise Line Transfer Bus, but Magical Express sounds better. It does cost extra for Disney to pick you up from Walt Disney World or the Orlando International Airport and take you to the port, but I really feel like it's worth it. Even though an Uber or a Lyft will cost you less money, I feel like that experience for Port Canaveral, I'm just talking about Port Canaveral, is definitely worth it to do it through Disney. If you're leaving out of Galveston or Miami or a different port, then it's a little bit different. I'm just specifically talking about Port Canaveral. Now, on my family's land and sea adventure, we actually took the Magical Express from our resort at Walt Disney World to the airport, and then from the airport we took the Cruise Line Transfer Bus from there to Port Canaveral. We use this strategy mainly because that's what my grandmother wanted to do, but another big advantage to doing it that way and going to the airport first is if you have more family or friends who are meeting you for the cruise and not at Walt Disney World, that is a great meetup point. So they don't have to come to Walt Disney World and then to the port. Everyone can just meet up at the airport and go to the port together. Another big question that I get about the land and sea adventures: do you have to book it through one of Disney's special promotions where they have the land and sea package? No, you don't. During my family's land and sea adventure, we actually booked them separately, a Disney Cruise Line reservation and a Walt Disney World reservation. It was not a package. The big question here is all about transportation. If you're staying at Walt Disney World, how do you get to the port? All you have to do is make one phone call to the Disney Cruise Line or Magical Express, and they will set it up so that a bus will come to your resort and take you all the way to the port. You do not have to go back to the airport if you don't want to. If I was to book another land and sea adventure today, I would book them separately, just because you're able to choose everything you want at Walt Disney World and on the Disney cruise. What dining plan do you want? Which stateroom do you want? What add-ons do you want on the cruise? You choose all of it. It's customized when you combine them yourself. If you do decide to book them separately, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you book the cruise first. It's almost mandatory that you have to book the cruise first because those dates have been locked in for years. For years and years, Disney plans in advance for these things. Those dates do not change. You can easily move around the dates for Walt Disney World. The cruise dates, those are set. Now, with all the transportation from the airport to Walt Disney World, from Walt Disney World to the port, and then from the port back to Orlando International Airport, what about your luggage? In Disney style, your luggage is transferred almost seamlessly. On the Magical Express, it's delivered to your room, and then when you're going from Walt Disney World, you hand it off and they will take it on board for you and it will be in your stateroom. It is super convenient. Another extremely common question: is it less expensive to book a land and sea adventure, or just a trip to Walt Disney World, or just a Disney cruise? This depends on countless factors: which stateroom, which resort hotel, dining plans, add-ons, excursions, and so much more. Putting some of those factors aside and just thinking generally for a moment, generally a land and sea adventure is going to cost you more per night than a Walt Disney World adventure by itself or a Disney Cruise Line adventure by itself would. On the Walt Disney World website, it's easy to see that the longer you stay, the less you pay per day. That has been the case for many, many years, and we can see it very easily looking at those ticket prices. In my opinion, the land and sea adventure is the best way to test out the Disney Cruise Line to see if it is right for you. You get the best of Walt Disney World, and you get to try something new. If you end up loving the Disney Cruise Line like I do, you have a whole new set of adventures ahead of you, but maybe you don't. Maybe you feel like it's not for you, just a little bit too slow paced. You want those rides instead. You gave it a try, you have some memories, but you have that entire Walt Disney World trip you did beforehand, and those memories which will last a lifetime. Given what I know now, I am so glad we tried the land and sea adventure for our very first Disney cruise. It was a great introduction. Those are my thoughts. I would love to hear from you. Have you tried a land and sea adventure before? Is it one of your favorite types of adventures ever? Or maybe now that you've heard more about it, you're considering it. Maybe you want to test out the Disney Cruise Line with a land and sea adventure. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for being a part of the magic with me. Until next time, have a magical day.